Welcome to the Martial Archives podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kipper. Today we're going to learn that Jujitsu is not always what it seems. What we call Jujitsu today was not necessarily what people meant when they used the word Jujitsu in the past. Along the way, we'll also find an early mention of something called American Jiu-Jitsu. Jiu-Jitsu is always evolving. Techniques are invented, adapted, refined, rediscovered. In the modern world, much of that evolution is driven by competition and the various rule sets that govern it. Walk into a modern jiu-jitsu gym and you'll often find that the methods of practice tend to reflect one basic question. What is the best way to prepare someone to perform in competition? Competition begets evolution. But competition on the mats, in a ring, or in a cage hasn't always been the only force driving the evolution of jiu-jitsu. You've undoubtedly heard the familiar story of jiu-jitsu's origins on the battlefields of feudal Japan, and of its continued development through the early modern period. You've also heard about the development of Kano Jiu-Jitsu and its transformation into what we now know as modern judo. As a young man, Jigoro Kano sought out masters of several different jiu-jitsu traditions. He studied their methods, took what he considered to be the best elements, and eventually developed his own system of training. At the 1886 Tokyo Metropolitan Police Martial Arts Tournament, Kano students won 13 of the 15 matches. The remaining 2 were draws. Kano's style of jiu-jitsu was suddenly on the rise. Before long, Kano's jiu-jitsu became the method studied by the Metropolitan Police Force of Tokyo. But now let's jump forward several decades and across the Pacific to a different police force. In 1921, in Seattle, Washington, 2 rookie police officers and a detective were killed while attempting to apprehend a suspect. One of those who saw the dangers faced by American police officers was Svend Jorgensen, a relatively new member of the Seattle Police Department. Svend had been born in Denmark, but immigrated to the USA as a young man. Jorgensen believed law enforcement officers needed a practical method of protecting themselves. And much like Kano, Jorgensen sought out teachers, studied what was already available, and eventually developed his own system. But there was an important difference. Jorgensen's system wasn't designed for sport. It was designed for survival. And we'll let Jorgensen explain his training methodology in his own words. But before we get to Jorgensen, let's travel back in time once again, this time to 1942. That's when syndicated newspaper columnist Ernie Pyle wrote about jiu-jitsu. Seattle, January 27, 1942. All my life, I've wanted to know jiu-jitsu. Like most men of small dimensions and mighty courage, I've always felt that if I only knew jiu-jitsu, I could throw all these modern Greek gods nimbly into the ash can and emerge a hero. So now I have met a jiu-jitsu expert and I'm on my way. This fellow not only knows jiu-jitsu, he has gone so far beyond it, he could make hash out of a whole squad of regular jiu-jitsuers. I did not ask this expert to show me any jiu-jitsu tricks. In the first place, he was so big, I was afraid he'd kill me on the first lesson, and second, He gave me 4 books on the subject. I'm going to study at home by candlelight, and then burst out all of a sudden one day, throwing people right and left. My jujitsu friend is Svend Jorgensen. He is a Seattle policeman. He is a hearty, good-natured guy who looks just like a cop. He is 50 and built like a yoke of oxen. Even if he didn't know jujitsu, I bet he could beat hell out of you. He was born in Denmark, came to this country when he was 19, went to sea for 4 years, worked in Alaska, and was a physical instructor in the United States Army in the last war, and joined the Seattle Police Force a few days after leaving the Army in 1919. Years ago, the police department started Jorgensen teaching jujitsu to the force. Now every patrolman, Jorgensen has said, has had some training. Jorgensen has never fired a shot in his 28 years on the force. He is proud of that. I'd rather have a medal for not killing somebody than for killing somebody, he says. During his police career, he has captured 67 gunmen, 1 murderer, and 50 safecrackers. I asked him how many of those nearly 100 desperate cases he had actually had to use his jujitsu on. Patrolman Jorgensen looked a little disappointed. Only 3, he said. The rest, I just got the jump on them. Jorgensen could shoot them dead if he had to. He is a super crack shot. He holds 127 medals, more than anybody on the force for sharpshooting. He has won the Distinguished Pistol Shooting Medal in the National Rifle Matches at Camp Perry. He has won the Distinguished Pistol Shooting Medal in the National Rifle Matches at Camp Perry. Jorgensen got interested in jujitsu shortly after joining the police force. What got his heat up was one night when a Seattle tough guy, with a gun in each pocket and another stuck in his sock, killed 2 rookie policemen and a detective. They got killed because they'd never been trained to protect themselves, he says. So he started figuring out how policemen could take guns away from bad men. First, he got an American to teach him some jujitsu tricks. Then he took lessons from a Japanese expert. With that basis, he began inventing his own brand of jujitsu. Today, his jujitsu is only 15% Japanese and 85% Jorgensen. Jorgensen has taught thousands of people. He has trained the military police at Fort Lawson and Fort Lewis. He has trained detachments of United States Marines, Coast Guardsmen, and National and State Guardsmen. He has trained patrolmen. He has trained patrolmen at El Paso and policemen from 8 western states. He has even trained some girls at University of Washington, just in case. Thank goodness I'm too old for college. Jorgensen knows hundreds of ways to disarm and knock out tough eggs without using your revolver. But there's one hypothetical situation that always stumps him. Suppose you ask that the bandit is 20 feet away with his gun pointing at you. I've never yet figured out how to get a jiu-jitsu hold on a bullet, Jorgensen says. If a man is 20 feet away, you better start shooting before he does. He has written 4 booklets on his favorite subject. One of them, called American Police Jiu-Jitsu, has sold more than 40,000 copies. Jorgensen is so wrapped up in his subject that he sometimes comes in for a little kidding from the other policemen. For instance, at roll call the other morning, I have here a cablegram concerning Patrolman Jorgensen, the captain said to the assembled policemen. It is such an unusual recognition of his work in jiu-jitsu that I wish to read it aloud. And the captain read approximately as follows. In view of the distinguished place Patrolman Jorgensen occupies in the world of scientific self-defense, It is hereby requested that the Seattle Police Department attach him for this period of emergency in order that he may be matched by our government with the best jujitsu expert in Japan. They shall then wrestle it out in a previously designated meadow, and the winner shall decide who wins the war. Signed, General Douglas MacArthur. Jorgensen is still a little skittish when you mention it. Ernie Pyle was a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, best known for his reporting on ordinary American soldiers during World War II, the men he often referred to as the dog faces. Rather than concentrating on generals and famous commanders, Pyle wrote about the experiences of the average soldier. His columns became enormously popular across the United States. Pyle would eventually follow American troops into the Pacific. In 1945, he was killed by Japanese machine gun fire on Shima, an island now known as Iwo. He was 44 years old. But back in the United States, Svend Jorgensen was continuing to develop his ideas about Jiu-Jitsu. Jorgensen eventually wrote 3 booklets describing his method. And rather than trying to explain his system for him, I thought it would be more interesting to let him speak for himself. So let's take a look at what Svend Jorgensen had to say. This book on American police jiu-jitsu is the Jorgensen method of self-defense. It teaches anyone how to defend himself or herself against armed criminals or violent or demented persons. This system is the result of many years of study and practice by this internationally known police instructor. It has been written with only one purpose in view, that of teaching law-abiding citizens how to defend themselves against criminals, thugs, and bullies. If every citizen knew how to protect himself or herself, there would be far less crime. It is absolutely vital that the reader, before practicing any of the methods shown in the following pages, should read these instructions carefully. For best results, practice with a partner is very desirable, and if practiced faithfully and above all carefully, you should become a real expert in a short while. Jiu-jitsu is by its very nature dangerous to the person experimented upon. Permanent injuries may result if instructions are not followed to the letter. Take every exercise slowly, performing the motions like a slow motion picture. And as you become proficient, you can speed up as much as you like. In fact, lashing speed is absolutely essential to success. With the come-along holds, use no more pressure than necessary to get to the hurting point. With the knockout blows, don't hit hard in practice or you will injure your partner. With the knife disarming, use a piece of broom handle or a piece of rubber hose instead of a knife. And with gun disarming, use an old broken gun or else be sure that the weapon is not loaded. And keep your finger out of the trigger guard if you don't want it broken. Remember, practice slowly at first. Jorgensen's interest in jiu-jitsu wasn't simply academic. He believed it had a practical purpose, and that purpose was closely connected to his work in law enforcement. In 1946, Svend Jorgensen ran for sheriff of King County. And if you want to know what kind of sheriff he intended to be, his campaign platform gives us a pretty good idea. From the Seattle Star, March 29, 1946, headline, Jorgensen run for sheriff. Veteran patrolman Svend J. Jorgensen, the police department's jiu-jitsu authority, today announced his candidacy for Democratic nomination for sheriff. While partisan politics represents a new field for Jorgensen, He has found plenty of opportunity in his 27 years on the police department for extracurricular activities. He undertook to perfect himself in Jujitsu 24 years ago, when he found that many policemen didn't know how to take care of themselves in physical encounters. Since then, he has taught thousands of policemen, soldiers, sailors, and Marines, and to no inconsiderable number of civilians who have enrolled in his classes. Jorgensen also is a crack shot, holding 21 medals, but he has never yet fired at a man and hopes he never has to. And although he walks a tough Skid Row beat, he boasts that he has never had to hit a customer over the head with a club. But what gives Jorgensen most pride is his record of saving 14 lives, 11 gas victims, and 3 drowning cases. Jorgensen will remain as a member of the force while he campaigns. His shift is from 4 a.m. to noon. That gave me time to work as a bouncer for 6 years during the Depression, he explains, and it ought to give me time for campaigning now. Jorgensen said if he is elected sheriff, his policy will be for members of the office to use their heads instead of clubs, especially in labor disputes. And Jorgensen expects to devote much of his attention to juvenile matters. He is interested in youngsters, he explains, both because of his experience as a parent and because of the numerous contacts he has had with boys' groups demonstrating jujitsu. I think I would have voted for him. Svend Jorgensen passed away in 1973 at the age of 83. I've often seen posts online that say something along the lines of, "Jiu-Jitsu saved my life." I think Svend Jorgensen would have understood that sentiment, although he might have amended it slightly. Perhaps he would have said, "Jiu-Jitsu can save everyone's life." If this was Chinese food, that'd be the takeaway. Jiu-Jitsu doesn't have to look the same way in every place or every era. Sometimes it evolves because people are trying to win a competition. Sometimes it evolves because people are trying to survive. Sometimes it evolves because someone looks at the world and says, there has to be a better way. Jorgensen wanted to make the community safer for all. In closing, I'd like to mention the deaths that Svend Jorgensen credited as the motivating factor that began his jiu-jitsu journey. On January 21st, 1921, while questioning a suspicious person on Broadway Avenue, officers William T. Engel and Neil C. McMillan were shot, later dying from their wounds. Later that same night, Detective James J. O'Brien was shot and killed while searching downtown for the suspect who had shot Engel and McMillan. The lone gunman responsible for the January 21st shootings was apprehended, convicted of murder, sentenced to death, and hanged at Walla Walla State Prison on April 1st, 1921. Rest in peace, officers Engel and McMillan. Rest in peace, Detective O'Brien. Roll in peace, Svend Jorgensen. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Martial Archives, please follow the show and leave a comment. They're always appreciated. And if you know someone who enjoys martial arts history, tell a training partner about the show. Until next time, I'm Dave Kipper. Tap and grow.